This is The High Road with author and registered psychotherapist, Dr. Marlene Bizub. Dr. Marlene speaks to the heart of people who need to be lifted up and get out of the muck and mire that often accompanies major life changes, such as divorce or separation. Dr. Marlene will aspire to help parents of divorce to love their children more than they hate their ex, and to learn to take the high road. So please welcome the host of The High Road, Dr. Marlene.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Welcome, George.
Great to be with you again, Dr. Marlene. Good morning in our time zone, anyway.
Yes, yes. And this is going to be, I think, a good topic for you. You know, often what we talk about, I think, is maybe slanted a little bit towards my role in family law cases. But this one will probably be a good one for you because I bet you have a lot of things to say about how parents in these cases shoot themselves in the foot.
Well, it's okay that it's slanted in your direction. It's your show, after all.
It's
But
our show.
there are many things that people do in the attorney-client relationship that kind of sabotages that relationship, or where they make errors. And I'm looking forward to talking about that today.
Yes, I am too, because parents don't realize, they want to blame someone else for the outcome of their case or for the co-parenting relationship as it develops or doesn't develop. And more times than not, in fact, I would go so far as to say the vast majority of the time, it is not what I'm doing, what you're doing, even what the court has done. It's their own behavior that is awful. And so let's just start. I'm just going to start here. I have a little list that I made, but my list may be different from your list. But what I see, and actually this first one I was just talking about, and it does involve probably you more than me, but parents will blame either the therapist or the attorney for how things are going or the outcome of their case. But they get on the stand and say something stupid or, whatever it may be. With me, it's fighting how I'm handling therapy or whatever my role is in the case. So I'll let you take this one because I think this applies more to you than me.
Well, I think that sometimes people's errors in the attorney-client relationship start very early with the selection of the attorney. People say,
Mm,
I want a pit bull, as opposed to an attorney who tries to encourage an alternative to the litigation track, and exercises reasoned counsel with the client. And then from there, failing to follow the instructions of the attorney or the attorney's office in terms of completing documentation, providing documentation and information, um, but but saying whatever my attorney wants is fine with me, and not being an active collaborator with the attorney in making decisions. Um,
mhm.
so it goes on from there. If they have an order or a final order or decree, failing to consult that when a problem arises, failure to take advantage of the various roles that a mental health professional can play. The list for me really goes on, and we have to try to counsel and advise the client not to shoot themselves in the foot with how they behave and how they behave on the stand. If there's going to be a hearing or the case is going to trial. So it's really a very long list, I guess, on my part for ways that clients shoot themselves in the foot. And then it goes on to post-decree issues, where if they're acting out or misbehaving or ignoring the court order, that's a terrible problem and can bring sanctions to the parent who is not complying. So we have to be very careful because there's almost an endless list of ways that a client can sabotage their own position in the case.
Yes, yes. Well, and I'm going to pick up on something you said there about not listening to their attorney. And you kind of mentioned this also, but isn't there also the opposite concern that they listen too much to their attorney and the attorney never hears what the client really wants? And so then the client's unhappy and it's like, you just said to do what I thought was best. I didn't know what you wanted. Don't you have that too, like an over reliance on the attorney instead of, as you said, being an active participant or partner in that process?
There's no question, and it's a very difficult case when with a party who says, "I'm just turning my brain over to my attorney. Whatever he or
Right.
she says or wants is fine with me." That can be very problematic because the attorney is trained to go after or seek whatever the client wants. And sometimes what the client wants is unreasonable, unrealistic, generated by their own anger or hurt. So we have to be very careful in advising the client not to do things which sabotage their own position. And usually they come around. Um, Usually they take the counsel with a good attitude. But once in a while, we have clients who are just obstinate and they're determined to do what they want. And that can be problematic.
Yes, and they don't realize that we are there all the time. We're in court all the time or in that environment, and we know what typically happens or can happen. And, they often have a very misguided idea about how this is going to go. And, I don't know how we convince them that no, you have no clue and that's not going to be received well. I'm sure you deal with that.
No, and for some clients, they're so anxious about court. I have taken them to a courtroom and let them sit in the various seats and get desensitized, if you will, or familiarized at least with the courtroom and the various layout of the furniture, and the judge is going to be above you and looking down at you, and what it feels like to sit in a witness stand and so forth. So that can be very helpful at times with a client who's very anxious about court.
Yes, yes. And when I mentioned earlier about um, clients saying things on the stand that maybe you don't expect, I'm sure that's happened. And I mean, there's a lot to be said for informing your attorney of what your answers to some questions are going to be, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And it helps to review for a hearing with the client the types of questions they're likely to receive on cross examination so that they feel a
Yes.
little more comfortable with that. Because for most people, cross examination is very uncomfortable for them.
Hmm. Yes. Yes.
And so one thing they do
Hmm.
if they want talking of speaking of shooting themselves in the foot is if they try to show anger toward the opposing counsel. Uh,
Oh, yes.
That's a big one.
Yes. And I hadn't thought about that at all. That, of course, is your area. Um, but yes, you do have some people that they'll get rattled, if you will. I'm sure there's a better word than that, but they'll lash out. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that opposing counsel is going to try to provoke a parent if they know a parent has a temper and they're trying to show that to the court to benefit their client they might try to provoke the client to show their temper on the stand, correct?
Well, absolutely, and then use that temper outbreak to say clearly this parent is not capable of co-parenting, and the parental decision making and so forth should go to my client, and
Yes.
not to this uh, volcano looking to explode, and how that's going to create conflict in the post-decree world. So we're careful about that.
Yes. Yes, for sure. And speaking of post decree, I'm glad you brought that up because things are going to play out however they play out. And you may find yourself back in court. I mean, we hope not. But a lot of clients, a lot of parents don't anticipate that and they don't think about it. And they get through court and they kind of feel a sense of relief and let their hair down, if you will, and then start behaving very badly. Now, I'm sure you've seen that too.
Well, and unquestionably, and particularly when the client or the party is dissatisfied with the outcome, they are going to try to act out or go around the rulings of the court, and that typically does not play out well. Uh, the judge expects his or her ruling to be complied with.
Mhm.
They typically enter a ruling that they believe to be in the best interest of the children. And so, parental violation of those rulings, the judge will typically see that as incapability to act in the best interest of the children, to try to
Mhm.
indulge one's own anger and so forth at the ruling or the decision of the court. It doesn't play out well. And again, as you have observed, the clients are typically unwilling to accept responsibility for their own behavior if things go badly.
Yes.
And
Yes.
unfortunately, sometimes that is generated by that very, very strongly held belief, what I want is reasonable and no reasonable judge is going to disagree with me.
Right. Not realizing that the other parent feels the same way, except
Right.
it's the opposite opinion, and
Yes.
they're thinking their stance is reasonable. You mentioned the court expecting parties to follow their orders. And I agree. I mean, there's some parents who think, okay, we're done with court. I can do what I want. And they disregard orders. And then they find themselves being held in contempt. Along that whole line of following orders, not following orders, something that I deal with a lot in my work is parents who don't agree on what the order means. In fact, just this morning, I sent a dad an email because he had sent me an email and he said, we are required by court order to have 12 sessions in 12 weeks. And I looked at the order, and the order does not say that. It says they are to have a minimum of 3 months of therapy to be determined by me as far as the frequency and, all of that. And so I said, well, no, I'm determining the frequency. So it might not be once a week. And it doesn't say we have to have 12 in 3 months' time. It says we'll have therapy for a minimum of 3 months, but at a duration and frequency. It was duration and frequency to be determined by me. And so there you have a clear misreading or misunderstanding of the order. In his mind, that meant therapy once a week for 12 weeks. And that's not what it says. And so, do you want to speak to that?
Well, I think first of all, it's a question of what the order says for the
Right.
mental health professional. And the
Mhm.
court can't really order you to be successful in revising this person's attitude and outlook on life in one session or 5 sessions or 10 sessions. And
Right.
so it's good to have an order that gives you that flexibility, which recognizes the reality that the court, no one can say, well, I'll totally rehabilitate this person's attitude in 5 sessions or
Right.
10 sessions or whatever. So it's good to have that kind of order with that flexibility where the judge recognizes that. I think that's important.
Yes. Yes. And often parents will misinterpret it the way they want. It suits them because he'd like to speed up the process. And he even said, the clock is ticking. And I wrote back and I said, there is no ticking clock here. We don't have a ticking clock. And I also explained, as you were just saying, the court is not going to box a therapist in by saying you have to have this many sessions. They will often say, as this order said, a minimum of this long in therapy. But again, they're not going to say once a week or a total of 12 sessions or any of that, correct?
No, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, yeah. And so, we have different interpretations of what the order says, and that causes parents to fight a lot also because they just can't agree on not just what it says, but what it meant.
Yes,
And
and that would be another error on the part of the client, not to go back to the attorney and say, "Hey, help me understand this. Is it requiring A or B?" And
right.
because the attorney's still available after the case is concluded, and there
Mhm.
may be post-decree activity. So failing to maintain that attorney-client relationship, even if you're not seeing the attorney or having appointments, that can be a mistake too.
Yes, yes. And a lot of parents are quick to be done with their attorney, and they don't realize you're really not quite done. I mean, you might have a final order, but more things are going to come up. And so you're not quite done. And being able to just call and consult with that attorney is worth a lot and is usually necessary at some point.
Yeah, I think that's true. And people, if they're frustrated and angry with the ruling, they want to lash out maybe at the attorney and say, "You didn't fight for me," or I mean, that's a typical thing that people say.
Mhm.
My attorney didn't fight for me. Um, Really, that's usually a misunderstanding of the attorney's role and what we're doing and how we're going
Mhm.
about it. Um, I guess there are cases or instances where the attorney didn't fight for the client or to their satisfaction. Um, but really, the attorney needs to be able to exercise reasoned behavior, reasoned counsel, reasoned interaction with the court and the opposing attorney. And so I think sometimes clients don't understand that we learn to disagree without being disagreeable.
Yes. Yes. Very well said. Very well said. Because again, parents have an expectation that isn't realistic and they don't understand how the process works or how court works. And so they're going off of this ideal view or vision of how it's going to be. And it's often way off base.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And so it's good for them to counsel with their attorney. It's good for the attorney to advise them what they can expect if they're going to court. All those things are very important.
Yes. Yes, they are. They are. Well, we have more, but it's time to take a quick break. I can't wait to get to some of these other ones. So stay with us. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to easysense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's easysense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Before we went to break, we were talking about ways in which parents shoot themselves in the foot in their family law cases. And we kind of touched on this, but not completely, or you might have more to say about it. But one of the items on my list, George, is unrealistic expectations. And you mentioned earlier, I just want to delve into that a little bit more. You mentioned earlier that parties will think no reasonable person will disagree with me. And sometimes a judge feels differently than either parent feels. And we can't predict what a judge is going to think or feel or any of that, how they view certain things. So, do you want to talk a little bit about things parents expect that are just unrealistic? And I'm hitting you with this cold. I mean, you haven't had time to think about it, but does anything come to mind of what parents expect that
Yeah,
is just
yes.
unrealistic? Okay. Okay.
What really jumps out at me is uh, failing the client failing to recognize that their roles are probably going to change, at least to some extent. So if you have a parent who's been a primary caretaker, they expect that role to continue unabated. And it's not likely to happen. There's going to be distribution of the time and the authority with regard to the children. So
Mhm.
having the expectation that things are not going to change, I've been the primary caretaker. I'm going to continue to be the primary caretaker. The judge is going to recognize that and not require me to work with the other parent to make decisions. That's a huge mistake. Because the roles are going to change. A primary caretaker may become employed. A person who's been the primary provider financially may now have a significantly greater role in terms of child provision or caretaking.
Mhm.
And so I think a huge mistake that people make is thinking that their particular circumstance is not going to change. The judge is not going to change their particular circumstance. That is unrealistic. And again, many times people will see a divorce court as a court of loss. So they
Mhm.
feel that they have lost position, they have lost financial status, they have lost their authority with the children. And none of that is necessarily realistic objectively, but subjectively, from that person's point of view, they think they've really been wronged.
Yes, yes, and I'm gonna piggyback off that because that's an excellent point. And adding on to that, what I often see is an unrealistic expectation of the parent in regard to how the kids are going to respond to that change. For example, I have a dad who has never been the caregiver, and mom was a stay at home mom. So they're working towards 50-50. They're not there yet, but they're working towards it. Well, part of the reason they're working towards is because dad thinks it should happen right now and totally unaware of the fact that the kids have not warmed up to this idea, or the word I use with him all the time is foreign. This is foreign to your kids to have you put them to bed, to have you pick them up and drop them off. Mom was a stay at home mom. She did all of that. And so when the kids resist, and it's nothing against him, they're resisting because it's foreign. And, they saw some things during this separation, some anger and things like that, that have also caused them to be a little bit fearful. So you've got a parent who's in a role they've never been in. You've seen some things in the middle of the separation that have scared the kids or whatever. And you get a parent who just doesn't understand why these kids aren't warming up to this. And, he says things like, well, this is going to happen, right? This has to happen. And I'm like, wait a minute. The court said slowly, the court said over time, things like that. And so I know that stuff that you may not deal with a lot, but that's kind of how it plays out in my office after the fact, as a result of that parent who's unrealistic. And maybe in court, for example, let's stay with this example of this dad. He got what he wanted in court. He's getting more time with his kids. But now the way that's playing out in my office was something he did not bargain for. He didn't realize that kids aren't going to just readily embrace that and say, oh, okay, yeah, let's go. Let's go to your house, Dad. I'm ready to be there all week, you know?
Yeah,
So,
I think it's difficult because people are angry and scared, and then you add on to that change, and
yes,
change can be very daunting for some people. But
yes.
the reality is, and I think counsel has an obligation to prepare their client in this regard, that there are going to be some changes in the
Mhm,
roles that you play and how you play those roles as mom or dad. It's incumbent upon us to prepare the client, I think, to uh, get ready for those changes, to accept them,
mhm.
to move along with the changes that can be positive with regard to co-parenting and working with a mental health professional to do so.
Yes, yes. And going along with that change, and this applies to both parties, it's going to be unrealistic to expect, for example, that mom, in this case, I'll just use this case, um, cannot expect just unfettered access to the children. Dad, on the other hand, should not expect that they will never need to call mom and talk to her and get some comfort from her because she is their primary attachment figure. So you get two parents with different expectations based off the same order. That dad is like, why is she calling? And the kids are like, why would we not talk to our mom? We're used to having her there all day, every day. So you can see kind of the change for everyone. And it's an adjustment, it takes time. And some parents, especially the one that was never in that caregiving role, they often expect it to be immediate and go well and have a whole bunch of time all at once. And it doesn't work that way. I mean, speaking of unrealistic expectations, there's one right there that is huge.
Well, I would imagine that you hear from parents, "What's wrong with my children?"
Yes, yes, I
And
do.
really nothing. They're just
Right.
adjusting.
Yes, yes. It's an adjustment for everyone, and it takes time, and going back to the dad from this morning who thought that 3 months of therapy meant 12 sessions in 12 weeks. Kids need time to process. And so, whether it's in therapy or outside of therapy, they have to have time to process, especially major changes. This is a major change for these kids. And, parents just sometimes don't realize everybody has to have time to adjust.
Well, and I would think that especially with young children, if they're
Mhm,
used to a primary caretaker and then suddenly that's disrupted, that has to be hard for them to understand and really adjust to. And I would imagine that it would take some time, particularly for little young children.
mhm. Well, and to that point, we have one that's 4 in this family. And so, yeah, I mean, she's not used to being without mama, you know.
Mhm, mhm.
And it could be dad, it's not always mom. But when you set up a situation a certain way and then it changes, which it's going to in divorce, it always does for both parties. You have to expect your children to need a learning curve to get used to that change. And the parents need a learning curve too.
Yeah, I think really there's a lot of change involved, and for some people, change is uncomfortable. But there's going to be change involved in a divorce in the parenting situation. There can't not be change because of the divorce situation. So uh, parents need to be realistic about that, I guess, adjust to that themselves, and then they can be more available to their children and to help their children adjust, I would imagine.
Yes, good point. Because as they adjust, as the parents adjust in a healthy manner, the kids will. The kids will follow suit. But if you're struggling, either direction, struggling with having less time, struggling with having more time and more responsibilities and learning how to do that, if you struggle, they're more inclined to struggle because they feel that anxiety and that uncertainty. And so, yeah, we all need to show some grace with each other for sure.
And typically, my experience has been that a little bit of flexibility and grace goes a long way, and typically breeds reciprocation of that uh,
Yes.
flexibility.
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned that because that is absolutely right. There are parents who want to stick to the order and follow it to a T. No, the order says this. And if a kid needs to go back to the other parent earlier or have more contact when they're with you or whatever, let them do that. That is being focused on the child's needs above your own, which is one of the items in the best interest of the child statute in Colorado.
Absolutely, and I think that parents who are immersed in their own anger and
Mhm,
frustration and fear have a hard time nurturing their children.
mhm, mhm. They do. And then they wonder why the kids aren't warming up to them. And this is a great segue to the next item. And the next two actually kind of go together. Um, Parents often discount what the kids are saying and they will often blame the other parent for what they say. So we have a kid who needs more contact with whoever has been the primary caregiver, and the parent doesn't believe it. The parent blames the other parent. Your mom put you up to saying that, didn't she? And things like that. And I mean, there's just no room for that because they should expect the kids to need some time to get used to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would speculate that there are times where a child is upset at one home or the other, and it would be comforting to him or to her to speak with the absentee parent, even if briefly.
Right, right. And I tell parents that same thing. If a quick call at bedtime helps. Now, bedtime can be a bad time. It can make it worse and make them more sad that the other parent isn't there. But if a quick call, even earlier in the evening, will make them feel comforted, it's worth it. It's like, do it. And you get these parents who say, I don't want her or him interfering with my time. Well, it's what your children need. It's not your time, it's what they need, it's their time. And they really do need to have their needs taken into consideration. And so many parents just miss that. And like I said, they'll discount what the kids say, they'll blame the other parent for what the kids say and how the kids feel, and say things like, you're not encouraging them to be happy with me. No, they have no clue what it's like to be with you this much and for this long. And think about this too, George, and I'm sure you have, but I want our audience to think about this. They're used to being in a certain home. Now, that home may continue to be one of their homes, but they may not still have that home at all. So they're going to have at least one new home, but they're possibly and very, very possibly going to have two new homes, because you and I've seen many times when the family home is sold and both parents move into a new residence. Neither one can afford to buy the other out, take over payments, things like that. So they are adjusting to new environments too. And if parents don't think that's important to kids, they are sadly, sadly mistaken.
I think one thing that would cause me concern, and I'm not exactly sure the best, most constructive way to handle it, is a parent who fawns over the child when they call on the phone. I miss you so much. I love you so much. I can't wait to be with you again. Um, I think parents can overdo that and
Oh, yes.
uh, guilt out the child and trying to make the child their emotional caretaker. I would imagine that can be very problematic, and the parent is engaging in behaviors which are very hurtful to the child by doing that.
Yes, yes. And that happens a lot. And it happens both ways. It can be both whoever was the primary caregiver or whoever was not around the kids that much. Playing that kind of emotional blackmail with your children is unacceptable. It is unacceptable. And yes, you get parents who get on the phone and they're sad and, I miss you. It's been so hard to be without you. I can't wait until you come back. And it's just not something we should do. We
No.
are adults. We need to take care of our own emotions and not place that on the kids.
And I think sometimes it's done innocently, but parents
Yes,
need to be educated to the fact of the harm that that causes.
yes. And often it is, you are right. Often it is innocent, but often it isn't. And either way, parents need to be aware of it. If it is innocent, I get that, but they have to be aware of it and modify their behavior to take care of the kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we are coming up on time for another quick break, but we'll come back and finish this out. And We'll just see you in a few minutes. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll be right back.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you're watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. Before we went to break, we're talking about parents who knowingly or unknowingly put emotional baggage on their kids, if you will. I don't know a nicer way to put that. But I'm going to share a story because it just happened yesterday in my office. Mom is getting married this weekend, and one of the kids felt so sorry for dad and so bad for him that she wrote out, and she's age 7, she wrote out on a piece of paper with crayons an invitation to mom's wedding for dad. Now, that is very sweet, and dad did handle it well, but that's an example of a kid trying to take care of the parent's emotional well-being and not the other way around. And kids should not be taking, I mean, it's very touching and very sweet that she cared about dad's feelings and dad being left out. But dad kindly explained to her, well, your mom and I live separate lives now, and it's really not appropriate when she marries someone else for me to come, but thank you for inviting me. And of course, I then told her, well, honey, that wasn't your place. It's mom's wedding. Mom will invite who she wants. But again, that screamed of this child at 7 trying to take care of dad's emotional needs.
Yeah, I think that parents, if they could focus on one thing and nothing else, it would be that they need to give their children in actions and words permission, and even better, the expectation that they love and respect the other parent. If I could
Yes.
get clients where I could say there's one thing and one thing only that you have to focus on to help your children be healthy, that would be it. To give them the expectation that they love and respect the other parent, regardless of how difficult that may be for you.
Yes. Yes. And this is a good segue to something you brought up earlier that was not on my list. But I think it's something good to touch upon, and that is you had mentioned at the beginning that parents often don't know the various mental health professionals that are available to them after the divorce is final. We all know about custody evaluators and people like that. And most people know about therapists, but there are divorce coaches. There are PCDMs, parenting coordinators, decision makers, people like that who can help parents through this process. And I, as a mental health professional, appreciate you as an attorney bringing that up and pointing that out to parents because they often think, I'm done with my attorney because I'm done with court, which, as we talked about earlier, is not necessarily true. But they forget that there are mental health professionals who work in the courts who can help them through this.
Well, I think that's true, and the the I'm looking for the word that really displays the symbiosis, I guess, between attorneys and mental health professionals. They
Mhm.
can coordinate their efforts. The mental health professional is a great resource and my best friend on a case usually.
Yes. And I agree, we have to coordinate and collaborate together. And I always do with attorneys. I strive to have a collaborative relationship with both attorneys, even though they might have very opposing views of what should happen. We still have to collaborate. I got on a call with two attorneys yesterday on a case and talked to both at the same time so they can hear where I'm coming from, and that can help each of them prepare for their case.
Yeah, I think that that's an excellent way to handle uh, issues and so forth is to have a conference call with both attorneys and the mental health
Mhm.
professional because it's educational for the attorneys.
Yes, yeah, because they didn't know really where things were at in the therapy. We're doing reunification therapy, and neither one really fully understood where we're at. And so I just got on the call with both, told them where we're at. It's not one sided or the other. And I made a point of telling them that. But I think we need more of that, and we often don't get a lot of that. And then one other thing I'll mention, and I really want to hear your thought on this. And we touched upon it as we were talking here, but probably the biggest issue I have, and I'm sure it shows up in your office as well, is just parents who fail to take accountability. They are looking at everyone else's actions but their own, and they just don't take accountability. And I know that's hard for you to deal with and address with the client because you are their advocate. I'm not, but you are. And you're going to perhaps just lose a client if you point out their lack of taking accountability. But I know you often see that. And this is probably why a mental health professional is your best friend.
Well, I there's only so much that somebody can do to control someone else. They have
Right.
control over their own emotions, or they should. They have to strive to get control over their own emotions. They're not going to be able to control the other party. But it's important that their behavior is exemplary with regard to the children.
Yeah.
And so the acting out and stuff like that is just not healthy for the children. It's not prioritizing their needs. And again, I think we understand that we're asking a lot of people to
Yes.
prioritize the needs of their children, to forego their own pain,
Mhm.
and focus on what is going to raise healthy children.
Mhm. Yes, we are. And I'm glad you recognize that because I think sometimes attorneys, I don't want to say forget that you do, but it's not your role to really address it. And
No.
so encouraging them to get a therapist of their own, get a parenting coordinator, get a coach, whatever it may be, I think that's just good practice. And it's what they need. And it is hard for parents to focus on the needs of their children right now. It is. But I'll tell you, often I will point out to a parent that, well, we're not really focusing on his or her need. We're kind of doing what you need and what you want. And I get that, but let's focus on your kids. And they will often quickly turn it around and say, wow, you're right, you're right. And it's almost easier because they don't have to focus on their pain. They have somewhere else now to put their time and attention and focus than on their own pain. But they don't think about it. They're so caught up in the battle and embroiled in the conflict that it's easier to stay focused on that ex who has treated me so horribly and I've been wronged and I'm going to write that and I'm going to do it through my children. Well, no, you're not. All you're going to do is cause your children to be unhealthy human beings.
Well, and it's your mantra of loving your children more than you hate your ex, and it's
Yes.
critical for the children's well-being, for their development, I would imagine and expect. And so you can sacrifice your children and indulge your desire to fight, and the price you're going to pay for that is how your kids turn out, how their relationship is with you once they reach young adulthood. Um, and so it's a choice you have and a choice you have
Yeah.
to make.
Yes, exactly. And I'm glad you point that out because it is. It's a choice. It's a choice. Is it an easy choice? No. But if you know you can't do it, talk to someone. We have
Mhm.
ways to help you through this that people just don't realize are there. Support groups. And, sometimes just a few quick phone calls with someone like me makes a lot of difference. It doesn't have to be, 10 or 12 or 20 therapy sessions to get over this trauma. It can be a few quick phone calls of someone just putting you back on track, just changing your perspective a little bit. And
Well,
often we have those things that we can say that do that for people.
I think divorce recovery is a real thing,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it can really be helpful to have someone working with a mental health professional to deal with their own issues rather than dumping them on the kids.
yes, absolutely. That is right. That is right. Well, hopefully, parents will take advantage of the resources out there available to them. This isn't easy, but that's why we're here. And that's why we do what we do each week here.
I agree with that.
Yes, yes, for sure, for sure. Well, we are out of time once again, but thank you, George, and thank you for everyone who is watching and listening. This is Dr. Marlene and George, and you've been watching The High Road on the Dr. Marlene YouTube channel. We'll see you next week.
Tune in to The High Road with host Dr. Marlene and gain insight into how to rise above tough circumstances and learn the skills that will help you take the high road in your life, no matter what challenges might come your way, on the next episode of The High Road.